About 30 years ago, between 1961 and 1965, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared many times to 4 young girls in the village of Garabandal in northern Spain. 2 of the Visionaries, Jacinta and Mari Loli, arrived at Canberra Airport on the 5th of July 1991 as honoured guests in the Second World Congress of Garabandal. They were greeted by Australian members of the Garabandal movement and by Father Francois Turner OP, who travelled from France to be a guest speaker. The Visionaries came direct from the USA. Mari Loli was accompanied by her husband Frank Lafleur and their 3 children, Francis, Melanie and Maria Dolores. Jacinta was accompanied by her husband Jeff Moynihan and their daughter Maria. There were also other supporters of the Garabandal movement, Maria Fitzpatrick of the headquarters in New York and Maria Saraco, a long-time advocate of the messages that Our Lady delivered to the world in 1961 and 1965. The Congress was held at John the 23rd College at the Australian National University. Regional Director John LaRue opened proceeding by introducing honoured guests.
And obviously I must introduce to you our dear friend, first of all, Bishop Morgan. And then also our dear friend from France, Father Francois Turner. But this is an historic occasion for a number of reasons. First of all, we had just passed the 30th anniversary of the first apparition of Garabandal. In 30 years, just over 30 years. Secondly, it's the Second World Congress and the first held in the Southern Hemisphere and in our beloved country of Australia.
During the Congress, John LaRue spoke privately to our visitors from America. It was the first time that Marie Loli and Jacinta have been interviewed about Garabandal events before a television camera.
And the miracle. We have read in some magazines and books that you were supposed to have said that the warning and the miracle would be in the same year. Now we know that that is mistaken, but could you confirm it with regard to the warning and the miracle?
It's within 12 months.
Within,
but it doesn't have to be in the same year.
Yeah.
It can be 12 months period, within the 12 months period.
So the warning and the miracle within a 12-month period, but not necessarily in the same year. Is that right?
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. Jacinta, can I ask you this question? Do you think there will be much time between the warning and the miracle? The reason I ask that question because Australia has the longest distance to travel, and we need at least 2 weeks preparation. And we were wondering, a lot of people have said that the warning and the miracle will be very close. But do you think that there would be enough time, or how much time would we have between the warning and the miracle? I mean, just your own opinion.
La pregunta es, porque Australia está lejos y quieren ir al milagro, ¿piensas tú que hay bastante tiempo entre el aviso y el milagro para que ellos puedan llegar?
Yo no sé nada de eso.
She says she doesn't know anything about the subject of the timing of that. She said nothing about that, meaning the timing of between the I explained to her the warning and the miracle, so on the timing of it, she says she knows nothing.
Okay. Maria Saraco, would you have any opinion? I know it's just an opinion.
Well, I know that back in 1969, I was very concerned about how the world was going to learn about the miracle. And Conchita did tell me that the means of communicating the date would be a miracle in itself. So, you know, I have a lot of faith that the ones that are supposed to be there, the Blessed Mother has them already picked out, and she'll see to it that they get there, whether they're far away on the other side of the world, or whether they have the funds or they don't have the funds. As long as they express a real firm desire in a sincere way that they want to be there, if it's God's will, they will be there.
All right. Now this is addressed to any member of the panel. We have heard quite a bit about the general falling off of belief in the events of Garabandal, that is throughout the world, prior to the miracle. Now, And in view of that, some people have said there won't be many people at Garabandal for the miracle. Can any of you express an opinion or a view on that? I know it's an opinion only.
Yes, I've heard that from several sources, but the best source we have is our Lord himself in a locution where he said that before the miracle, few would believe Conchita. Even her own family would think that she deceived them. And she was very concerned about this because she had just come back from Rome with an audience, private audience with Pope Paul VI. And she said, what about Rome? Will they also disbelieve me? And he said, never mind whether they believe you or not, I will do all. So that is how we know that few will believe before the miracle. But what is actually going to cause it is, we really don't know.
Right. I had something to add, too. When this warning comes, because it's worldwide and so spectacular, I think this will go against this lack of faith in the apparitions, and this will change things, and so that people will have a renewed interest in it, and that the quantity of people going up there will be a big number. The prophecy didn't say few people would go for the miracle. It only said that when the time drew near, something negative would happen, that few would believe. But I think that after that is when the warning comes, and this sign, the warning will be to everyone, so because of that, there'll be more courage, like for Conchita to announce. I think that when she said it's going to be a miracle, the way the miracle is announced, she was joking, saying, I need a miracle of courage to announce it. But this warning will provide the miracle of courage she needs to announce something which is a big responsibility.
Right. Well, in connection with that question, when we were in the village in 1989, and we happened to meet Placido there, and we had a meeting, which was very fortunate. And Placido said that this general falling off belief, he was told by Conchita that even you, Placido, will not believe. And so Placido more or less agreed that there would not be too many people at the village during the miracle. So that is the reason why I asked the question. So would you like to make a further comment on that?
Well, I have heard other things regarding the subject, but I have not seen proper documentation that would allow me to express it as a fact. But I have heard several stories, rumors, or whatever. People said that something like this was going to happen. I further did hear that something would happen the very week that Conchita announced the date of the miracle. But I'm not at liberty to give it because, as I say, I can't present it as a fact.
Mariloli, may I ask you this question? Of all the apparitions, which made the biggest impact on you? I understand that that might have something to do with prayers for priests.
Well, that's the thing I think is more important in my life, to pray for holy priests. I don't know.
With regard to apparitions, you feel that's the most important thing in your life, to pray for priests.
Yes.
Right. And now there has been some confusion concerning the night of the screens. We now understand that the first night was a preview of the warning, and the second night was a preview of the chastisement. You see, at one time we thought that the screens were only concerning the chastisement, but actually it was one for the warning, one for the chastisement. Can you elaborate, for instance, obviously both were frightening. Were they frightening, both the preview of the warning and the preview of the chastisement? Were they very different, or were they frightening? Can you give us some idea?
It's very hard for me to explain now.
Yes.
I just remember that we were crying a lot, but
Yes.
we were very scared, but
Yes.
I can
Which was more scaring?
I'd like to clarify something.
Yes.
I know that what's been said about the warning and the chastisement being shown at that time,
Yes.
but it's never really been authenticated that that was actually the warning. It really hasn't been. It's assumed, because the chastisement was shown in 3 parts, that the first part could very well be the warning. But at that time, it was not stated as the warning.
Right.
Excuse me for
Yeah.
interrupting. Loli, at the time of that vision, the thing that you've always told me that you remembered vividly was the fire. Fire everywhere.
Now that is concerning the chastisement.
Yes.
Fire everywhere, fire above, below, and within. I've read
Around,
that. Now,
yeah.
is that accurate? Would that be accurate? Fire above, below, and within. That was the feeling when you saw a preview of the chastisement.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yes. Not within, around.
Around. I see. Above, beneath, and around.
Would be worse than fire. Above, beneath, and all around.
Jacinta, I believe that you were most impressed with the vision of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Can you give us a little information of how you felt when you saw that? Because you were the only one who saw that.
¿Qué has sentido cuando has visto Sagrado Corazón?
Pues no se puede explicar lo que se siente.
He says it's indescribable what one feels when they see that.
But it must have been a very emotional moment for her.
I mean, very emotional and moving, a
Yes.
very moving experience. Fue una cosa de moverte mucho, ¿no?
Y me mueve cada vez que, o sea, que pienso que lo vi, o sea, siento la misma sensación.
She says not only was she very moved at the moment it happened, but she always feels moved anytime she remembers it. That is still very moving for her when she remembers it.
Thank you very much. Maria Saraco, you witnessed the phenomena of the girls in ecstasy. Can you give us your impression or anything you would like to say about that?
I only witnessed the ecstasy of one, and that was when Michael the Archangel appeared on June 18, 1965, with the Virgin Mary's final message for the world. And that happened to be Conchita. I knew that what I was witnessing was not normal, it was not natural, yet, as I explained to you the other night, the most profound moment for me was not that. It was when the message that she had received had been revealed to us the next day from her door. To me, that was the most important thing. Our Lady was speaking in such a way that I took it very personal. She said, because my message of 1961 has neither been lived nor has it been made very much known in the world, I will tell you this is the last one. To me, here I was supposed to be a promoter, I was supposed to be living the message, making it known, and yet Our Lady was now telling me, hey, you haven't done a very good job. And the other thing that troubled me in her message is when she said many priests are on the path of perdition. At that time, that's the way that phrase was revealed. We now know that what she actually said was many cardinals, many bishops, and many priests are walking the path of perdition and taking many souls with them. I felt in my heart, how could the Blessed Mother be saying such a thing about her consecrated sons? To me, I was always raised to believe that just because a priest was a priest, he was going to go straight up. And I found this part very difficult. I believed it, but I didn't understand it. That was in 1965. If you ask me that now in 1991, of course, I have quite a different opinion. But that was enough to make me realize that we really did have to get busy and start praying for priests.
Thank you. Jeff, may I ask you this question? Garabandal must have had an effect on your life and marriage, and can you imagine what it will be like after the warning and the miracle? Your comments on that, please?
The effect of all this on my life and my marriage.
Your marriage. And can you imagine what it will be like after the miracle?
Yes, I can imagine that it will even be even more profound, more meaningful. But I've had things happen along in these 15 years of marriage with Jacinta so far, things extraordinary, because I've seen the hand of God in them. There's been times when Jacinta has had prophetic dreams and has told me things about what was going to happen to other people. In these dreams, she saw the future of other people in my family, friends, acquaintances, and exact circumstances and places and things that nobody could imagine. She could see several months in advance, tell me all the description of what was going to happen, and then several months later I would see it all happen exactly as she saw in the dream. So for me it was very moving. It was like a gift of prophecy from the Holy Spirit. And on one occasion, for example, the day my father died, in 1979, we woke up in the morning and Jacinta said she just dreamed that my father was going to die suddenly and very soon. He was only 60 years old. He had always been in good health, had no health problems. That same day, later on, he had a heart attack that day, and in the evening, we were at the hospital looking at his dead body. So in the morning, I'm told by my wife that she dreamed suddenly my father's going to die suddenly as a surprise, and later the same day, it happens. That was only one of many cases, but this was like help from God to kind of warn me. And we said nothing to my father that day. We just called to say hello, and that was it. It was a Sunday. He had been to Mass and Communion. He was always very religious, so we knew he was well prepared. But when I hear things like that, I already feel very moved. So when I think about, a warning and a miracle off in the future that God will someday give, well, that's fine. That's the future. But I already look to my past and see all these blessings that have already happened, and I already feel very moved by it all. And I see the truth in it.
Sorry, Lolly, will you be at the miracle, or do you plan to be at the miracle? What do you think? Maybe you have no plans at all. So we're curious, too.
Well, I hope I can be there, but
You're not sure?
I don't know. for
Yes,
sure.
like many of us. We're not sure. We'd like to be there, but we're not sure. So that's how you feel, too?
Yes.
Frank, what do you feel about that?
Well, if it's God's will, I'd like to be there, the whole family. Leave it to God and His word.
Yes, that's how we feel too. Maria Saraco has already said, whom Our Lady want to be there, will be there. Maria, do you plan to be there? I notice you take pilgrimages to Garabandal every April.
Yes.
You must feel that it most certainly will be in April, the miracle.
Well, we pretty much know that for sure now, that it will be in the month of April, between the 7th and the 17th, but not the 7th and not the 17th. It will be on a Thursday at 8:30 in the evening, on a feast day for a martyred saint for the Eucharist, but not a feast day of our Lord or Our Lady.
Well, may I say this then? If you're so certain it will happen in April, between the 8th and the 16th, there could be, that's a 1 week, and there could be only one Thursday in that week.
Exactly.
And therefore, when the warning comes, you will know the exact date of the miracle.
Well, to be honest with you, that's right, John, you're absolutely right. But to be perfectly honest with you, as much as I have a desire, like everyone else, to be there for the miracle, that isn't exactly what I focus on. It really isn't. Because I'm anticipating the warning first. The warning will be a very frightening thing, so that no matter who we are, what we are, or where we are, we cannot escape nor prevent it from happening. And God is going to reveal our sins to us. We're going to actually see ourselves the way God sees us. And it will be absolutely frightening. It will happen in the sky, a physical and interior thing. It will be shown to people in different degrees depending on the state of their soul. If I live through that, which is what I'm focusing on, and if it is God's will, I hope that I will be at Garabandal for the day of the miracle.
What I would like to reiterate, this question of the miracle being in April. You really believe that it will be in April? You're almost definite on that?
Absolutely. I would never say it if I didn't have good documentation to back it up. I'd like to bring out another point about the warning, because I don't want anyone to be misled. As frightening as the warning will be, it will be obvious to all that it will be from God. Even the atheist will know in that moment that it's from God. But it will not kill us. If we die, it will be from the emotion.
Right.
So it's not something that's going to kill us.
Yes, we are aware of that, Maria. But what really we would like to know, what is your opinion? Would there be some period between the warning and the miracle? What do you think? What is your opinion?
Well,
Weeks, months?
You just said it yourself. Once the warning happens, we know when the miracle will be.
Yes, but the period between the warning and the miracle, what is your opinion on that?
It could be. It could be a week, a month. Months, I really don't know. My opinion is worthless. It really is. I can only repeat what we know to be factual. My opinion is as good as anyone else's, but we know, for instance, if the warning were to happen today, July, then we know it must happen next April. Again, the warning might not happen until, let's say, a week before the time of the miracle, and it could be that close, and then the miracle would be announced a week in advance.
Mary Lolly and Jacinta, what I found really most interesting was that during the apparitions, you played games with the Virgin Mary, and she played games with you. How did she participate in those games? Jacinta first?
Estaba preguntando sobre estos juegos con la Virgen, por ejemplo, escondite, o una cosa como así, y cómo fue eso. She says she doesn't remember it too well, but I remember one time I asked her the same question because I had read somewhere they used to play hide-and-go-seek,
Yes.
and I wondered, how do you play hide-and-go-seek with an apparition? And the way it was that one of the four girls would go hide, just like we do in America,
Yes.
and the others would wait and then try to go find them.
Yes.
Well, one would run out of the sight of the apparition, the other three would be seeing Our Lady still, and then Our Lady would help guide them to find where this person was hidden. And one of the four would go hide maybe behind another house down the street, and they were physically out of the apparition, hiding there. Then Our Lady would lead them to wherever they had hidden in the village, and then they would come into view within the apparition. This is the way it was explained, but that was 15 years ago, so that was the explanation I was given at that time.
All right. Mary Lolly, how was your feeling when you played games with the Virgin Mary?
I don't really remember very good.
You don't remember very well. You played hide and seek among the pine trees?
In the town, I think it was.
In the town, in the village.
Yeah.
Right. Now, of course, we believe that Garabandal is of enormous significance for the world. I think that we really cannot even understand the enormity of Garabandal. And so we wonder why the Blessed Virgin would choose a village of Garabandal. We have our opinion and we feel it's the most appropriate place, but what do you think, why she chose Garabandal, and that you four girls were so fortunate in being selected by the Virgin Mary? Any comment on that by any of you?
I'd like to answer that.
Okay.
2,000 years ago, there were a group of shepherds taking care of their flock when one night some angels appeared to them to let them know that the Messiah was being born. And that they were to go and adore this Messiah. And when they got there, they found that he was just in a plain, ordinary cave, what we call a stable. It was poor. It had no heat, except for perhaps the warmth coming from the bodies of the animals. This tells us a great deal of why Garabandal was chosen for Our Lady to come and speak to mankind. It shows us that God prefers simplicity, humility, and that was a lesson, a great lesson that our Blessed Mother taught these girls. She taught them patience with the spectators that came. constantly knocking at their door, asking questions. The girls were naturally shy, would want to run away, and Our Lady asked them to be patient, answer the questions that they could answer. She would help them. But the thing is that the poverty of this village, especially to perhaps Australians or Americans or going into this area, they had no telephones, no bathrooms, no hot water, no facilities whatsoever. You know, this is the first thing that hits you, this rock-cluttered village full of mud. Life here it's like you're entering a different world. But again, we have the simplicity, the humility of Christmas night. And the angel on Christmas night didn't appear to the big shots of those days. They went to poor little simple shepherds. And this is what happened to Garabandal.
Thank you. Mary Lolly and Jacinta, do you contact each other? We heard from Joy Lamangino that sometimes you girls get on the phone, three-way conversation, sitting on the carpet talking to each other. Do you still do that? Talk to each other on the phone? Although you're separated by thousands of miles.
Not 3 ways, but 2 ways.
2 ways.
Too much.
2 ways too much.
Sometimes it goes.
So the three of you who live in America, you do contact each other by phone.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Marie Cruz? She must be having a very difficult time, especially the last years, but I understand from what Father Turner said yesterday, as much she's well, let's say she goes to church now and she goes to the village and she seems to be much more settled. How do you feel about Marie Cruz? She was so close to all of you.
I talk to her when I go there in the summer. We just speak about our children and just the normal things of a family. And it seems to be very nice.
You meet her in the village?
Yes.
Yes. So she is going to the village now.
Yeah, I think she always used to do it during vacation in the summer.
And she takes her children with her?
Yes, I don't know if all the children, but I see some of them right there.
Yes, I'm so glad you're telling us about this because I've had many questions concerning Marie Cruz. Many people in our movement, of course, know about you and they know about Jacinta and they know about Conchita, but they hear very little about Marie Cruz, and even we. So I'm very glad to hear this. So Marie Cruz, as you say, how many children does she have now?
4, I think.
4 children.
She has 3 boys and 1 girl.
3 boys and 1 girl. And the village, 3 boys and 1 girl.
The oldest has been in the military.
Yes.
The eldest has already been in the military. Well, of course, she was the first to marry.
Yes.
Right. May I ask you, how do your children react to the apparitions of Garabandal?
They are very excited sometimes.
They're very excited.
Yes. They like to know a lot of things. They keep asking questions.
They keep asking questions like we do? And do you explain things to them?
Not too much.
Not too much.
I never talked to them about it, but they have found out by books or listening to other people's, like over here.
And they read the books on Garabandal, and then they ask you questions.
Yes. Sometimes they find new things, and they come to ask me if that's true. Like just today, they say, Melanie said, "Oh, I didn't know you levitated from the ground, Mommy. That's true." That happened.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that question of levitation. That was a beautiful shot. Do you remember how you felt at that moment?
No,
You were, of course, in ecstasy, and you don't remember.
no, I don't.
It must have been a wonderful feeling. Jacinta, how about your daughter? I'm sure she asks you questions too.
Tu hija, ella ha preguntado a ti preguntas sobre esto, las apariciones.
No recuerdo.
She doesn't remember, but yes. Well, it was just recently that we started giving information this is last summer, in fact, when we were in the village, and I started explaining things little by little. But our daughter had noticed things around the house, like some of the books, and the books had pictures of Jacinta as a girl, and she was always asking the question, why are you looking up in the air like that? And at first she was younger and it was hard to explain it, so we were just lost for an explanation. But now that she's a little bit older, she's beginning to understand. But of course, being children at their age level, only around 10 years old, they can't really fathom and when they're older they'll understand much better how deep and how important this really is.
Yo he querido que ella esté, como se dice, cuanto más apartada de ella.
In a way, Cindy was saying she wanted her daughter to be somewhat apart from all of this, because it does have a certain difficulty involved in the whole thing. The difficulties, well, if one uses their imagination, they can imagine what difficulties could be.
We can understand that quite well. And that's the reason why we asked earlier, how do you feel you would have to, after the miracle, it would be an extremely difficult time, we feel, for all of you. People would be wanting to make saints of the girls, of you two, and...
But, I've been asked that question by other people different times, but I keep thinking that when this miracle comes and the final proof is given, I keep thinking the world is going to be in turmoil at the time. Just like in Fatima, when the miracle came, the country of Portugal was in turmoil. It was involved in World War I. And when the miracle finally comes to Garabandal, the world will have its attention on many other things too, but those who are fortunate enough to be there and witness this wonderful thing, true, they will have a great interest in... the present situation of those involved. But on the other hand, the world situation will be such as, I don't think it will be as peaceful as it is today. It will be quite different. So we'll see what happens.
Mariloli, I'm sure from your experience already you feel that after the warning of the miracle, people will want to come up to you and talk to you, and they're already doing that. So you can imagine after the miracle, you won't have much of a private life, neither would Conchita, and I suppose even Marie Cruz. Have you thought about that?
Not too much.
You're just going to let nature take its course,
Yes.
and what our Lord and Our Lady have willed for you. Yes, I, in fact, was rather surprised to hear that Our Lady said you would be the one who would suffer most. I felt very touched by that when I heard, because I really didn't hear that before, although I read so many of the books. Maria Saraco, would you like to comment on that?
She probably wouldn't tell you,
Yes.
what's going on in her life, but I'll give you an example, which was really tragic. When Loli first came to the United States, she was staying with me, and she really was blessed to meet Frank, her husband, and on the eve before her wedding, she asked me, Maria, can I call my mother and father in Spain as for the last time as a single girl, because she was getting married the next day. And I said, sure, go ahead. And when she called, her aunt answered the phone, and she said, let me speak with my father or my mother. And the aunt said, they're not here. Well, where are they? Your father is in the hospital. What for? Well, you can imagine the worst. That was her answer. So she learned the night before her wedding that her father was dying of terminal brain cancer. This was a very tragic thing. And here we have this girl walking down the aisle, what is supposed to be the happiest day of her life, with a tremendous sorrow in her heart. I mean, people wishing her well, and she's smiling, but you look in her eyes and you see deep sorrow there. So this is just a little example, but little things that come up in the course of everyday life. People say, well, everyone has crosses, everyone has suffering, but it's like there's no rest in between. You finish one trial and another one begins. And she does have serious health problems right now, very serious. Do you mind if I tell them, Loli? She has lupus. which means that if she wants to survive, it means no stress in her life, no getting overtired, take her medication when she's supposed to, go periodically for checkups because she's on medication that could cause blindness, and there's a whole string of things. But she has been very much blessed also, as well as having these crosses and these trials that she has to face every day, and that is God couldn't have given her a more beautiful family, her husband and her children, all of her children.
We quite agree. We feel that it's rather arrogant, because we've heard this said, and we think it's rather arrogant for people to say that we do not need apparitions, that everything is in Holy Scripture. Now, since we've heard this on a number of occasions, we feel it is arrogant because God can appear whenever he wishes. Now, what is your comment on that?
Well, apparitions, truthfully, should never be a basis for our faith, but a means to increase it. And everything that has been said and happened at Garabandal only reinforces everything that we learned all our lives from Scripture and what has been given to us through the Holy Catholic faith. So it isn't anything at all contrary to it. And when these things occur, as I say, God permits this to happen for our own personal sanctification. He sees us going in the wrong direction and has to bring us back. He brings us back through the most direct means, which is that of a mother's love, and that is the Virgin Mary herself.
Right, Garabandal is essentially a message of love and hope for a world in crisis. Will it have a profound effect on Christianity and on the whole world in general?
Well, sorry, well, Cinta says she doesn't remember it because I think the reason she says she doesn't remember the prophecy is because many of the apparitions and things said are becoming fainter with memory as the years pass. But I remember several years ago that same question was asked, and at that time I was the interpreter and I gave the answer. And at that time, Cinta, when she remembered things clearly, remembered that the prophecy that Our Lady said with her exact words was that all mankind will someday enter into the Catholic Church. So this prophecy is very important. It's not a new prophecy. Our Lord Jesus Christ said that one day there would just be one fold and one shepherd. And the Catholic Church has always said that it refers to the Church, and the very word Catholic means the Church is universal for all mankind. And therefore, today this seems impossible to us and would take a miracle of grace from God. But since he can do anything, when he eventually grants his grace, it will happen. And he knows the time, and he has the manner, and there's different opinions on this. Some opinions feel that it's after a chastisement, then the world will reform itself and then have religious values and will enter the church. And as you say, the question may be related itself to the miracle of Garabandal. All this may help a great deal, and many people feel so, that the miracle will help with this prophecy. And this prophecy has been expressed in various saints down through the history of the church. And I just want to make one last comment that when I was reading books on prophecy, there was a Spanish mystic of the last century who was very well unknown in the world, especially the English-speaking world, a hermit that lived up in the Pyrenees Mountains. And he said the same prophecy, but he said it in a very beautiful way. He said, one day in the future, he said, the Catholic faith will become the happiness of all mankind. So I thought that was beautiful when he said the happiness of all mankind, because that's what mankind really needs, is happiness, and it doesn't have it.
Well, then it is true that Garabandal is essentially a message of love and hope and of enormous consequences for the whole world. We also believe, of course, that Garabandal is an extension of Fatima. And as far as Father Turner mentioned, Garabandal is really the end of one era, or one epoch, and the beginning of a new epoch, in connection with what you have said. So do any one of you wish to make a comment on that? The beginning of the new epoch, the end of the old, and the beginning of the new.
Well, not being theologians, I do believe perhaps the other term that most people are familiar with are the end times. Our Lady did say that we are already in the last warnings. She told us a few things that we still don't understand, such as this present Pope is going to be the last Pope. That's Pope John Paul II. And that he will be the last Pope before the end of time. But this has been clearly said, it does not mean the end of the world. So what does the end of times mean? I can't explain it, neither could the girls explain it.
But it would seem that it must be the end of one era, if he's the last Pope. And since we've already heard now that we would all be one, we would all be returned to the Catholic Church, obviously there would be a new church in the beginning of a new era. Don't you think that?
I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on television. The other thing that, since we're speaking about the Pope, is that there is a prophecy that says that the reigning Pope will see the miracle from wherever he is. And so I'm not going to interpret those words either. But obviously, if he's going to be the last Pope, and he is now what?
71?
71 years old. Well, you take it from there.
Right. Well, since you raised the question of the age of the Pope, and this Pope has to see the miracle wherever he may be at the time. He is 71, and Joey Lamangino is 61, and Joey Lamangino has to be there in view of the prophecy made in connection with his life. It would seem to us that the miracle could be, the warning and the miracle could be any time now. How do you feel about that?
Well, one thing is for sure, it's closer and closer to us. There's no doubt about it. And I didn't think about when it was going to happen so much during the period of the late 60s up until perhaps the end of the 80s. I've only recently began to think more and more about it. But I'm aware of the fact that the world has gone dreadfully wrong. So many things are evil. There are many good people, and it seems like those good people are really working hard for the honor and glory of God, for the salvation of souls. They're trying to fulfill their duties within their state of life, which is exactly what God and the Blessed Mother expect of us. This is the lesson she came to teach us at Garabandal. But yet the world is horribly evil. We see persecutions, we see wars, we see people committing dreadful sins such as abortion, homosexuality. I don't need to go into the list.
Right.
But the point is that even the sanctity of marriage has been floundered. No one believes in getting married anymore. They change partners like they change shirts. But the dreadful part is that they do not realize, they do not understand that this is sinful and it goes against God. Our consciences have gotten all mixed up. The things that we used to think were good and wonderful, now they're outdated, they're old-fashioned. Who needs it? Now, all these other things that we know are sins against the commandments of God, all of a sudden they become glamorous, they become everyday common things. What kind of schools can parents send their children to today without being concerned that they're going to be ending up on drugs and so forth and so on?
So, well, we do understand that's the reason why we need Garabandal. Yes, during the time of the apparitions, in fact, we didn't quite understand the true significance of Garabandal. But now, in the last 30 years, we're beginning to understand, in view of the crisis in the church, crisis in the world, that Garabandal is truly significant. Jeff, would you have anything to add to what Maria Saraco just said?
No, I believe it. Well, maybe I could add just a little bit more.
Jacinta has said something about that all this would come about when the world was at its worst. Isn't that right, Jeff?
Yes, that's right. And I do want to add a little bit more. The thing is, true, the morality of the world is very bad, and the sin in the world is bad, but the worst sin, of course, is this indifference to God, turning their back on God, not wanting to think about God, never wanting to pray. And when we stop to think about it, actually, we owe everything to God. Our very existence comes from Him. He is our very purpose for existing. And since we owe Him everything, we should give Him everything. But what's happening in the world today, there are so many people that give God nothing. So that's the worst thing in the world today. And hopefully with all this conversion that will go on in the future, then this will be a correction of the conscience of men, and men will begin to live the way God wanted them to, and then there will be a happiness and a mutual respect. But also, as far as the timing of things coming, such as the warning, the miracle, I know that many people, they hope for it each year, so they say, well, maybe this is the year. But there is also prophecy said that it will come at a time when there is persecution of the church. And this seems strange because the persecution of the church does not seem so bad today in the world, but there is supposed to be a very severe persecution of the church, and at that time is when God gives the warning and the miracle. So it seems like it may be several years more, and events will lead up to it, and things are going to change in the world, and strange things when we compare it to today, because it's relatively peaceful today compared to what it's going to be in the not too distant future. But I agree, it's not a distant future. But
Do you know that the Portuguese explorers, who were the first to discover Australia, named Australia, and that's where we got our name, and they called it the Southland of the Holy Spirit. Did you know that in Portuguese? The Southland of the... What is Australias in Spanish or Portuguese? Southland. Southland? Well, Jeff, you knew.
Well, I had heard this before, that this was not new to me, that Australia had that name. I was interested because of my family background in the past.
Yes.
I was interested in Australia because of my great-grandfather being born here. And so I studied some of the history of it, and I thought it was very beautiful that it was named for the Holy Spirit. And I have a friend who is a language expert, and I was asking about Australia, and he was saying yes in Latin, that would be mean, like the South and of the South. But I hear a sound of that word Australia in our English language too, and in Spanish, because when you say Australia, there's a sound of south, south, and in Spanish, sur. There is a little bit of the idea of south in that long word. It sounds rather long to us, and we've shortened it in the English language and in the Spanish language.
I want to thank you all very much. You've been very kind to us and very patient in answering these questions. Before we close, do any of you have a message for the Australian movement and our members? With you first, Maria?
Well, I think since the message was given by our Blessed Mother to these girls, I think perhaps that's the message they would want to give to all the people who are watching this, the message of, first message of Our Lady. But I think they'd rather say it in their own way. What was the message of the Blessed Mother, Loli?
I have to say it in Spanish.
Go ahead, say it in Spanish.
Mike? Say it in Spanish.
Hay que hacer muchos sacrificios, mucha penitencia, visitar al Santísimo, pero antes tenemos que ser muy buenos. Ya se está llenando la copa y si no cambiamos nos vendrá un castigo muy grande.
Yes. And did Jacinta want to say anything?
Just a short message, Jacinta, for
About the
Australia.
message. Anything to add? ¿Tienes algo para decir más sobre el mensaje? O es igual como Loli ha dicho, ¿no? No, she doesn't have any
The
add.
final message of the Blessed Mother, which was on June 18th, 1965, the day that I was there, Our Lady said, because my message of 1961 has neither been lived nor has it been made very much known in the world, I will tell you this is the last one. Before, the cup was filling. Now it is overflowing. Many cardinals, many bishops, and many priests are walking the path of perdition, and they're taking many souls with them. Less and less importance is being given to the Holy Eucharist. You must amend your lives and ask pardon of God, but with your sincere soul. And a very beautiful part of this, I love you very much, and I do not want your condemnation. Ask us sincerely, and we're going to give to you. Think of the passion of Jesus. So our Blessed Mother has given us all the tools to fulfill this message. The tools are prayer, penance, and sacrifice. And to help us and to strengthen us and give us the courage to fulfill it, she tells us, think of the passion of Jesus. But all this must be preceded first with true sorrow in our hearts for all the offenses that we've ever committed against God. So it is very important very important that everyone confess to God. If you're Catholic, go to confession. If you're not Catholic, repent and amend your lives. This is what Our Lady is asking of all of us. And then there's no need to fear. And remember, the life of humanity depends on whether or not we comply with this message. The warning, the miracle, we didn't talk about the perpetual sign that will be left in memory of the miracle at the place of the pines. These three events are major, and they are certain, and they are imminent. The only thing that remains conditional is the chastisement, which will follow if we refuse to turn back to God.
We want to thank you very much for coming to Australia, and when you leave Australia, believe me, you leave with our love and prayers. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Shake hands.
Some further interesting topics on Garabandal and the Visionaries and their families were revealed in the public talks to members of the movement during the Congress.
Well, I'm very happy to be able to speak here today to you, and because John LaRue has asked me to say a few words of greetings to all of you and to say a few words on something, perhaps a spiritual topic, leaving it open, so I came up with several thoughts and wanted to express them to you now. First of all, on behalf of Jacinta and myself, I would like to say thank you very much for inviting us to this conference here in Australia. I feel that it is God, of course, which we all know it is God, who has created this continent which has such beautiful plant life and such fascinating animals, and above all, its wonderful people. I am proud to say that my mother's grandfather was born here in Australia, and he was born in the gold mining town of Castle, Maine, in the which I'm sure you all know is in Victoria. Later, he lived in New Zealand and finally settled in California, where he finally died in the year 1928. Oh, by the way, he was born in the year 1862, when the gold rush was on in Castle, Maine. So my mother lived as a child in the same home as this Australian-born grandfather, and she loved him very much. And therefore, she would take me as a child to visit his tomb quite often. Afterwards, his widow left to my mother the house which used to belong to her. And it is in that house that I lived during the first years of my life. Recently, Jacinta and myself have visited his tomb. His tomb is located near where we live in California today. Also, concerning Australia, I should say that my closest friend, who has been my closest friend throughout perhaps my whole life, he is my same age, and he is a priest. 10 years ago, he was stationed here in Canberra, and he was stationed at the Vatican Embassy, which is also called the Holy See, as you know. He liked it very much working here in the diplomatic corps of His Holiness the Pope, and he spent 3 years here. And I used to write letters to him here in Canberra, but I never dreamed that someday divine providence would bring me here.
I think I'd like to take the edge off by saying that these girls do not like to go public. This is a very great privilege that we all have, that they're even sitting here. This is really very, very difficult for them. But I think to help this along, I'd like to ask Jacinta a question, if it's okay with you, Jeff.
Sure.
Jacinta, ¿tú llamaste a los santos obispos? Why don't you translate what I just said?
Que has hablado con el obispo?
Yeah.
Maria Saraco just asked Jacinta, have you spoken with the bishop? That is the Bishop of Santander in Spain. Who,
¿Tú llamaste a él?
she says yes. Now, and now Maria's asking, when did you speak with him? That was his birthday, which was happened to be just this last June 13th.
Yo lo llamé para preguntarle si estaba bien que viniese a la conferencia de Australia.
Maria Saraco asked, why did you call him? What did you say to him when you called him on the phone? And Cinta says, I wanted to ask him if he thought it would be all right if I came to this conference here in Australia.
¿Cómo te contaste?
Que sí, que hacía bien, que era mi experiencia y que si me preguntaban que hablaría de ello, pero que siempre diría que la iglesia no lo había aprobado, que estaba estudiando.
Okay, Maria said, okay, what was his answer to you, to that question about coming? So he said, yes, it's good. Yes, go to Australia. But then, of course, when you speak, say, this was your experience, and the church has not approved of it yet, but it is under study, and therefore it is perfectly fine with him as bishop that she should come and bear witness to her experience. That's the way he put it. Now Maria asks, what was your experience?
La mayor experiencia en mi vida fue ver el corazón de Jesús.
She said, the greatest experience in my whole life was when I saw the Sacred Heart.
No, nada más sentí eso en ese momento. Oh, lo siento conmigo siempre.
Maria said, did you feel that his presence was saying something like, I will be with you always? And Cinta said, yes, that was the feeling that she had, that this apparition, which happened only once and was very short, was so impressive to her that the feeling and impression that she felt was, yes, although this is a short apparition, I'm still with you always.
O sea, yo creo que era todo completo, pero yo nada más me fijé más en los ojos.
Maria asked, when you saw him, did you see just the top of him, like his head or something of that nature, or the whole body? And so she saw the whole body, but what called her attention was his eyes and his look. That was the thing that she was drawn to.
¿Qué tú piensas que es lo más importante aparte del mensaje de la Santísima Madre?
Lo más importante, pues para mí lo más importante es la obediencia a la iglesia y la obediencia en todo. Y hacer penitencia, sacrificio.
Maria asked, what do you think is most important that should be done? And Cinta answers that we should be obedient to the church. We should do such things as penance and sacrifice, and do as God commands in our life. That's what's most important.
¿Cómo es tu vida? ¿Qué tú haces para penitencia, sacrificio? to read el rosario.
Yo digo el rosario, sí.
Uh-huh. Says, well, what do you do in your life, for example, for penance or whatever, you know, in your life? So, and of course, Jacinta hesitate because it's a difficult question to come up with an instant answer. But the answer, for example, doing one's duties and saying the rosary.
Mi vida, o sea, para mí mi vida es sencilla, ofrecerle a Dios lo que Dios me da cada día.
She said her life is simple, and she just offers to God the things that are done each day.
I'd like to add to this because I know I'm putting Jacinta on the spot. She's too humble to tell you herself, but she does have groups come in whenever they wish during the day, and they pray together the rosary. Perfect strangers coming in and out in order to pray the rosary with her. And I think this is tremendous because it does disrupt her normal everyday life to take the time to do this with people, perfect strangers. And I know she's too modest to say this herself. And she was doing this for a long time just with neighbors without them even knowing who she was, just people that lived close by. I did want to tell you that because these prayers are being offered for the good of this work and the spread of this message and the sanctification for all of us. Hello, Loli. What do you think is the most important part of Garabandal? Why did our Blessed Mother come to the village?
To me, I think the most important thing is to ask to pray for the priest in my life. I feel like that's the most important thing I'm supposed to do.
Was everyone able to hear her? She said that I feel that the most important thing in my life that the Blessed Mother wants me to do is to pray for priests. Isn't it true, Loli, that the Blessed Mother told you that out of the four that you will be the one to suffer the most, that you will have one trial after another for the rest of your life? Isn't that true? Yes, she's saying. She can hardly get the words out. Undoubtedly, this is a trial for her.
Maria,
Yeah.
it might help if I ask a question, a practical question, which a lady in the audience asked me to ask.
Okay.
And that is, at a certain, in a certain ecstasy, you two made the sign of the cross differently from what we make it out here. In the film which was made by Dick Everson, and part of the sign of the cross was that you were signing yourself there and there and there, and it was different from the normal sign of the cross. I wonder, would you firstly indicate that sign of the cross, and then secondly tell us its status or its importance or its significance, whether it's just Spanish or what? Thanks.
Yeah, there's a custom in Spain, and when we first go to church, before we say the Holy Rosary, we're supposed to say, yes, to make one cross on the front head, so God delivers from bad thoughts, a cross in the mouth, so God delivers from bad words, and a cross in the chest, so God delivers from I don't know how to say the word in English. Bad desire. I think it's translación, pero da esa costumbre en Spain.
I'd like to add one more thing to that. Actually, that is a Spanish custom, not only in Spain, in all the Spanish-speaking countries, Central and South America. And what they're actually doing is blessing their senses. Something like what we do every time we stand to have the gospel read. We do almost the same thing. We're blessing our senses. And they also do make the sign of the cross in Spain, like everywhere else, in addition to this custom that they have of blessing their senses. Did you have another question?
No, unless you want me to. I've been thinking about it.
Well, go ahead. You might as well try while we're here.
Are the visions you have had very clear to you now, or have they become obscured with time and with the normal trials of life? Or is it that sometimes you can recall them very vividly, but generally not so? And kindly illustrate some of that clarity if you still enjoy it. That is, some of the clearness and some of the marvel of actually seeing Our Lady.
I think I'd like to answer that question for the girls, for both girls. Our Blessed Mother told these girls in the very beginning, right in the first year, that the day would come when they would contradict one with the other and even deny that they had seen her. They couldn't understand this. This was a very difficult thing for them to comprehend. And this one here, Loli, said, if they held a gun up to my head, there's no way I could deny ever seeing you when I'm seeing you. And Our Lady said, yes, you will, because you're going to pass through the same confusion as the church. Now, this is very well documented. Conchita had recorded in her diary, and it is a fact. It was heard by the witnesses, but no one understood it in 1961 when it was said. But the day came when it all happened, just like the Blessed Mother had said. Today, the girls have a very difficult time to recall things clearly. I'm sure all of us have had dreams, and when we wake up, the dream at that moment might be vivid, but just maybe a little bit later in the same day, we have a lot of difficulty trying to recall this. This isn't anything unusual in the lives of the saints or mystics of the church. Great saints. The one that pops into my head now is St. Teresa of Avila. She had written in her autobiography, she had a great deal of problems recalling the wonderful, she was one of the greatest mystics of the Catholic Church. She was even made a doctor of the church. And yet, this saintly woman, the saintly nun, had a very difficult time recalling her mystical experiences. And she wrote in her autobiography that now, because she could no longer remember, that she was the state of the church. Second, he wants these girls to become sanctified, to rely entirely on him and not on themselves. In other words, he's helping them to become saints, because this has been a terrible anguish, a terrible suffering for each and every one of them. And I think that's the explanation that I'm sure the girls would agree with me. Would you agree with me? Yeah.
I'm not sure if Jacinta understood everything I said.
So this is a terrific suffering for all of them, and they really need our prayers very, very much. A lot of people think that they're mystics, they're saints, and they want to touch them, do this and that and the other thing. Well, they're not yet. They have a long... have a long road to walk, like all of us. No different. Yes, they do have a tremendous responsibility. But God and our Blessed Mother is going to help them. They have their assurance. Our Lady said, I will be with all my children. You know? So this is something very reassuring, not just with them, but with us. And the more we know, the more responsible we are. Now, I'd like to ask Loli, do you have a question, another question? No. I'd like to ask her a question about the priests. You know, Our Lady said that out of the four, she would be the one to suffer the most because she would have one trial after another. I've known Loli a long time, and I'm not going to go through the list of sufferings that she has had to endure from all the years that I've known her, since 1965. I'm not going to go through that litany, but take it from me when I tell you that her life is like a soap opera. Even, you know, soap operas never end, you know, there's always a problem, there's always a crisis in their life. But this is a fact. But the interesting thing is that Our Lady said she wanted her to offer this for the sanctification of the priesthood. And the priesthood is a very, very important part of all of this. The Eucharist, Jeff brought out about the Eucharist, which I think was absolutely stunning. And between the Eucharist and the priesthood, they go together. You can't separate them. You can't have one without the other. And Our Lady taught the girls that this was very important, that they must pray and sacrifice. They didn't just say make sacrifices. You have to sacrifice yourself. There's a big difference between making a sacrifice and sacrificing yourself. And so this is the other phase of Loli's life. Now, Loli, what are you doing in order to make the message known, besides sitting here today?
No, I don't know.
Again, she's too modest. She's not going to tell you. She's not going to say that she goes public, because she doesn't. Because this is another one that does things without people even knowing who she is. Okay? She was called upon to be on the Marian Commission for the Archdiocese of Boston in order to be able to assist with the Spanish-speaking people. She also goes one Sunday a month as a volunteer to a very poor Spanish clinic, again, to help with the Spanish-speaking people. She was approached and asked if she would be in the Spanish Legion of Mary. Again, she's going with this. Another thing that she asked to do, and she felt so sure she couldn't do it, but somehow she's doing it. We all know why, right? Our Blessed Mother is the one behind pushing all the time, and that is to teach CCD to the young Spanish teenagers. But the force behind all of this, I think, is also based on the life that her husband Frank really is trying to instill on the family. I'd like to ask Frank a question now. Frank, how many hours a day do you normally work? How many hours a day do you normally work?
8.
8 hours. Don't you work on Saturdays too, as a rule? And I know there's been maybe right now it's 8 hours a day, but many times you have worked at least 12 hours a day, right? And how many rosaries a day do you insist that the family must say together?
Well, we say one rosary together.
As a family. And and for you and Loli, how many?
The whole room.
So they say 3 rosaries a day. Our Blessed Mother told Loli in her last locution in November of 1965, when Loli asked her, "Are you pleased with my prayers and my sacrifices?" Our Lady said, "Yes, but you have to become more dedicated in everything and to continue to pray the rosary every day." A rosary to them is not 5 decades like it is to us. It's the 15 decades. I started asking Frank about how many hours he works is because he could come home after working 12 hours a day, still attending Holy Mass every day, going to communion every day, but those 3 rosaries had to be said whether he was half dead or not. And the same thing with Loli. So this is the force behind the family, and our Blessed Mother is the force behind him. Is there anything else, or is it time now to stop talking?
As you will appreciate, they have never done this before. They have never attended a congress in any other foreign country. So we, in Australia, are extremely privileged and honored to have them here today.
They're just like you and me. They're really no different.
And of course, members of Queensland who also assisted in the organizing of this conference. A special thanks to Vanita Jarvis, coordinator of ACT, who has done a really wonderful piece of work in not only organizing this conference, but in heading up the ACT Garabandal Center. You've got the message. When you go back home, live and spread the message of Garabandal. And so I would like to thank all our guests for being here today, and we truly appreciate their presence, for which we are most grateful. Only as a token of appreciation, we are giving them little mementos so that they won't forget us or Australia, no matter what happens. Mari Lolly. Mari Lolly, this is a ring on which is engraved the chalice and the host, and the base of the chalice is in the shape of M for Mary, and at the very base of it is the pine tree engraved onto the ring, representing the 9 pines of Garabandal. Mari Lolly, we thank you very much, and we love you very much. Jacinta, the shy one. Jacinta, we wish to thank you very much for coming to Australia. Please don't forget us, and you know we love you very, very much. Maria, I am sure you've made a tremendous impression, and this mustn't be the last time in Australia. You must come back again.
John. I love you all, and you too, Helen.
When Marie heard of this Congress, she said, I wouldn't miss it for the world. And here she is.
My dear friends, I accept this gift as a sign of the love and mutual cooperation that exists between all of the wonderful centers of Australia and the New York Center that I represent. Thank you so much.
Jeff, please come forward. Now, as you've heard, one of Jeff's antecedents was born in Australia, and he's very proud to be here today, a dream fulfilled, and I think he deserves this present. It's the traditional Australian akubra. Frank is the reserved one. I didn't want to surprise him. He knows what he's getting.